Three-time Stanley Cup champion Jonathan Toews has announced he's ready to make an NHL comeback. But at 37 years old, should the Mammoth be interested? We're going to tell you why and why not on today's Locked On Mammoth.
You are Locked On Mammoth, your daily podcast on the Utah Mammoth, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into Locked On Mammoth. I'm veteran NHL voice Tom Callahan, and alongside longtime team analyst Robin Leaño, we're the dynamic duo that brings you Locked On Mammoth. Thanks for making us your first listen each and every single day when it comes to the Utah Mammoth hockey team. Well, Robin, big topic going around, and it's not just the Mammoth who will be talking about this, but I truly believe every single one of the 32 NHL teams is probably going to discuss it at some level. Jonathan Toews, who captained the Chicago Blackhawks to 3 different Stanley Cup titles, at 37 years old, has missed a couple of years, but now says he's ready to pursue an NHL comeback. We're going to talk about the circumstances that led to Toews being where he is and missing the last couple of seasons. But Robin, I mean, this is pretty big news. The guy they labeled Captain Serious was a massive part of Chicago's cup-winning era.
Oh yeah, no, the Chicago dynasty is forever attached to 2 names mainly, right? Jonathan Toews and Patrick Kane. Like those 2 names, will carry so much weight when it comes to the legacy of the 2010s of the Chicago Blackhawks, and so. Like when you have one or the other, obviously they both each one of those names carries weight on their own, but a lot of people still talk about Kane more than Toews, but Toews still gets a significant amount of conversation outside of it.
Absolutely. And so that's the conversation we're going to have today. We want you to be a part of that conversation as well. So feel free to drop your comments in here, chime in, and of course, you can always reach us on social media. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, where right now new FanDuel customers can get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. So first of all, Robin, the obvious, Jonathan Toews at 37 years old, certainly not the Jonathan Toews of 25 years old or even 30 years old. But in the meantime, we have to, I think, explain why Toews missed a couple of years. And it's kind of interesting because there's not really a specific explanation. Toews has said to varying degrees, my body felt like it was shutting down on me. He was exhausted. He was dealing with chronic fatigue, believes it was long COVID that caused a lot of that. And Toews last played in the National Hockey League in the 2022-23 season, 31 points in 53 games. Now, that is not Toews-like, but neither was the previous season's 37 points in 71 games. But clearly something was ailing Jonathan Toews, and he took time away from the game, saying he was just too tired to continue to compete. And Robin even went on a journey to look at different medical options, different ways of living and eating and recovering for his body, looked into Eastern medicine. I mean, he really left no stone unturned. It's been a long journey, but now it looks like Toews feels like he can compete at the NHL level again.
And I mean, it's nice to hear something like that. But I think it's important to remember this, Tom, that when an NHL player gets that old, I mean, medical issue, injury issues, medical issues, a lot of that, they're not uncommon, right? You see a lot of players run into issues once they get past the 35, 36, 37 years old. When they get around there, things start to slow down. Even before then, right? Even the lower 30s, things start to slow down a little bit for them. And I mean that's just Father Time, just doing what Father Time does, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Father Time's undefeated, and nobody plays forever. But Toews, again, running into that wall and at a tough time at 35 and 36 years old, trying to figure out what's wrong, how to make it better, went through a long process to get there. So one of the upsides, the appeal of Jonathan Toews, outside of the fact that, number one, he was the captain of those Blackhawks teams, but number two, Toews has always been high 50s, low 60s in point production in his career. There have been a couple times where he's been a point per game guy or close to it. The 10-11 Blackhawks season, 76 points in 80 games. Believe it or not, in the shortened season of 2012-13, he had 48 points in 47 games. That was actually one of his most productive years. But Robin, what's tantalizing about Toews, in 18-19, no, I realize that was 6 years ago, 81 points in 82 games and 35 goals. So even into his 30s, his early 30s at that point, still there was production possible for Jonathan Toews. But now, okay, 37 is what we're talking about here. 37 years old, but a leader, a Stanley Cup champion 3 times over. And the question I'm going to start with when we consider whether or not the Utah Mammoth should be interested in Jonathan Toews is, if you're trying to win a cup, does it make sense to have a man who captained a team to 3 of them on your roster?
It's a really good question, right? It is a really good question, and I think it's a complicated answer because it's a complicated question to answer because yes, I mean anybody would want a 3-time Stanley Cup champion on their team, but there is also a aspect of a lot of aspect of one. I mean, haven't been on the ice in such a long time. 2, at that age, at what point I can you really provide a significant contribution? But if you, I can go ahead and make more arguments about that in a little bit. But I will say this: that that level of like just intangible, something you just can't you don't get anywhere else, and the level of leadership that he brings, there is so much of a positive that you can bring in, despite some of the negatives that I can expand on even in a little bit too.
Now, and later on, I'll even present an interesting option that you may or may not have thought of. I'll do that a little bit later in the show as far as how to get Jonathan Toews in for the Utah Mammoth. But when you look at a role for a 37-year-old who hasn't played in 2 years, Robin, I think it's a realistic expectation to say, if you make the team, if Jonathan Toews, we don't need you to be captain, right? We don't even necessarily need you to wear an A. He's going to have a leadership role as the elder statesman in that locker room. So he will be a guy that is looked up to and respected. I don't know that you have to give him a letter. But you do have to look at the locker room. How would he as an individual blend in? How will your leadership group accept him? And then what would his role be? I mean, quite frankly, Robin, missing 2 years, being 37, I could project Toews as maybe a 4th liner, maybe a 3rd liner. But I don't know that Jonathan Toews is top 6 quality. Now, look, if Toews is in excellent health, comes back and finds the hockey edge once again, could be top 6, but I would say 2nd line is probably the limit of the sky here at this point for Jonathan Toews. I would expect a bottom 6 role.
Yeah, middle 6 at best.
So now you weigh that. Now you have to factor that. So we're going to continue to talk about this because, like I said, I have a suggestion as to how the Mammoth might be able to just work him in. And then I also, Robin, want to talk about a couple more positives and a couple of the negatives as to whether or not the Mammoth might want to look at bringing in Jonathan Toews, who at 37 says he's ready to make his NHL comeback. And today's show is brought to you in part by FanDuel. Hey, the NBA playoffs are in full swing. I know you know this, Jazz fans. And every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game, both before tip-off and during live action. With player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. Which players are showing up in the biggest moments? Isn't that what the playoffs are all about? How could tracking their trends help you build your next bet? What would it look like to combine live prop bets mid-game based on how the action unfolds? And, of course, this is the kicker. How could a $200 in bonus bets add to the excitement of your first $5 bet if that bet hits? New to FanDuel? Great. It's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. And if it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Tom Callahan, Robin Leaño here, back with you on Locked On Mammoth. Thank you so much for joining us. Want to say hello to the everydayers and all the new folks who have joined us here throughout the last couple of months. And again, the program has been growing so much. We want to say thank you to each and every one of you, whether you have been here for a long time or you're one of the new folks. You are certainly welcome. So Jonathan Toews at 37, should the Mammoth explore it? Robin, I'm going to kick this one over to you with this thought as well. So now with Toews, bringing him in, knowing that he could or could not be part of the leadership core, if the expectations are lighter and or reduced, and really what you're looking for here is the experience, does that make it easier to come into a team like Utah as opposed to going to a team, I'll just pick one randomly out of a hat, that hasn't won since 1967, the Toronto Maple Leafs?
It's really interesting you brought that up, because I was thinking about a lot of different things here, Tom. And I feel like Utah can pull a quote Maple Leafs in a similar situation, and I call it I'll call it similar adjacent, because there's a lot of different factors that went into it. Type of player different, but the aspect of why you bring in a player like this is the same. Right. I remember back in the late 2010s when the Toronto Maple Leafs signed a one Patrick Marleau, and people were wondering, why did they do that? Well, remember then you had Austin Matthews, William Nylander, and Mitch Marner. All of those were really young guys. They wanted, they had a lot of upside talent. They were getting ready, but what happened was they essentially found a dad, someone to kind of help them grow and help them be a little bit more comfortable with themselves, the NHL, while also getting better at those skills, to kind of just to be a better hockey player, right? And I can certainly see, even though Jonathan Toews might not be what he used to, he can still bring in maybe the dad energy. He can bring in the leadership experience and really just help, coach up the young guys like your Dylan Guenther, like your Logan Cooley, and a lot of the other people who are just about to come in. That would be, I would imagine, that kind of goal. And to me, and to think about it, and after you mentioned it, it does make things a little bit easier to think. Yeah, I think there is a level of enticement if you were Jonathan Toews to come, because you see the young crew and you see the talent and be like, yeah, I can help bring these guys to the next level.
And when you're talking about Toews, the career numbers: 1,067 NHL games, 372 goals, 511 assists, so 883 points, and a plus 148 over his career, despite being a minus 31 with the Blackhawks, who, quite frankly, the last couple of years, even when Toews was there, they've been awful, right? You don't end up with Connor Bedard without being truly awful. Mm-hmm. But the Blackhawks are paying the price for those three Stanley Cups. And that's they mortgaged the farm, and it worked. And it worked 3 times. Like, that's a great run for any franchise. I know Mammoth fans would take that in a heartbeat to know that, look, 10 years after, you're going to deal with misery, but in that run, you're going to feel amazing. And that's what Chicago did. So now they're paying the piper. Of course, it actually helped them when Toews was unable to play, because it shed almost $11 million in cap room for them to be able to put him on the long-term IR. So that actually helped the Hawks. But now he's a free agent. The other thing is, Robin, I cannot see him being that expensive. I just don't see it. Like, he had his fat cat contract, but is there a team in the NHL that even might go half that? Like, would you ever pay a Jonathan Toews at 37 years old who hasn't played in 2 years, $4 or $5 million?
No.
Or is he going to be like a 1.52?
You could probably be as low as that, Tom. And it really depends on how much he's willing to come back and
True.
what the and what the value is. Like, and again, this is speaking completely out there, but we've seen it happen. I've seen it happen with some veterans just because they want to get back into playing. Some will sign at the league minimum, like around at least for vets, which would be, I think, what is about $1 million. I know league minimum for younger, if you're under 30 or whatever. I know there's something in the CBA. If you're under 30, league minimum is $775,000. If you're over,
right,
it's 1.25 million or something like that. Wouldn't surprise him if he comes in at that level, kind of on a hey, let's see how you do kind of contract, and then maybe see where you go from there.
And I could also see him foregoing more money for another year of term. You know what I mean? So that might be something as well.
2-3 year contract. Let's say if I can get that, I'd be willing to go at the minimum.
Right. And that way, at least you're able, if you're physically able to play, you can play 2, maybe a third year. So, okay, there's that. Now, Robin, I have a third option as to how, and I think this might be the route, no matter where Jonathan Toews ends up in training camp, but I think this might be the way he gets there with an NHL team. And I'm going to tell you what that is here in just a second. Back here on Locked On Mammoth, Tom Callahan, Robin Leaño. Hey, subscribe if you like the show. If you love what you're hearing, we're going to be here with you every single day right up through, I can't believe we're into June, but we're going to be here with you all the way into free agency, early July. Robin, I have no idea where the time's gone.
I don't. All of a sudden, I'm like, wait a minute, it's June. And then at the end of this month, we're going to be in Los Angeles getting ready for the draft. What the?
I know. That's crazy. Happy June, everybody.
God.
Holy cow. I can't believe we're here. So I have a thought, Robin, and I think this is probably the way it works out. I honestly don't necessarily think Jonathan Toews, there'll be a lot of interest. There'll be a lot of tire kicking, and he may have to do some private workouts. I don't think he actually ends up signing a contract. I think he ends up going into camp with a team, Mammoth or otherwise, on a tryout. I think he ends up coming in on a PTO.
I can certainly see that. That's certainly very well possible. And here is a scenario, and not necessarily a Mammoth scenario, but this is for another team, because it all of a sudden now the wheels are turning in my head, the gears are turning. I'm thinking, all right, where are some other possible scenarios? If let's say it's not Utah, there's another team who just signed to a contract for a new head coach who has been out of the game for a little bit, who was Jonathan Toews' head coach during those Stanley Cup runs in the Anaheim Ducks. Joel Quenneville is back in the NHL. I mean, even to a lot of people's dismay and controversial opinions. I mean, no matter what opinions you had, I mean, the fact of the matter is he's back in the NHL. And maybe, just maybe, that's kind of like, if all else, that's where he ends up.
I could see that. And maybe the familiarity of Quenneville, who would at least know the player, know how to use the player. But I mean, that doesn't preclude him from going anywhere else, literally anywhere else in the league. But I have to imagine, here's the other thing. If you're Jonathan Toews, and I'm sorry, Buffalo, but I'm going to kick you while you're down. You don't want to go to Buffalo or a team like Buffalo. They're not breaking that drought next year, unless crazy things happen. But I just don't see it. I don't see him going to a team that doesn't at least have a chance to play meaningful playoff hockey this year, next year. Because I don't know that he wants to come back for only 1 year. I don't know that he'd do that. I think he wants at least 2 years, and maybe 3. Maybe he wants to play till he's 40. And so there's a lot of question marks around Toews. So is he even going to be healthy enough? So, Robin, presenting all of this as options, what are your thoughts? And as you all know, if you've been listening to the show for any amount of time, you know that I like to make Robin Leaño the general manager of the Utah Mammoth on a regular basis. Once again, I am putting the general manager hat on Robin's head. Robin, would you, and what options would you use if you say yes, sign Jonathan Toews to the Mammoth?
It's such a complicated, I mean, I will say this, and someone commented on this, and commented previously, and when we talked about signing other players and saying, hey, there's so much risk and whatever. I really think Jonathan Toews could, if it is really for a lower dollar value, is a very low risk, high reward kind of scenario, or potentially high reward. I mean, it could still backfire, but at the end of the day, they're not going to be hand tied of anything major. It's not going to be anything, and it wouldn't be anything crazy. Yeah, you're gonna tie down one of your 50 contracts that you can sign, if you're an NHL team, but that's still 50 contracts. The Utah Mammoth still have a lot to get to 50 contracts right now. So I say it's I say pick up the phone. I mean, he's taking phone calls right now, right? I'd say, call him, maybe get him for a couple of workouts, do a PTO, whatever, and see what goes from there. I do not see the risk at all in doing so.
As of now, 39 to 50 contracts. And if Nick Bjugstad is not back, if the boomerang is not here, Robin, is that a role that Toews could fill? Not that Toews has been overly physical, but Toews has always been and aggressive's not even the right word, but just there in the mix, plays a good, solid style of hockey that doesn't shy away from contact, doesn't necessarily seek it out either. If you ended up replacing, if Bjugstad's not coming back and Toews slides into that role, which again, bottom 6 mix, that's not the worst thing in the world for you while your team is trying to figure out how to win Stanley Cups.
It's certainly not. And you mentioned it, right? It's not where Toews is a different kind of play style than Bjugstad. I mean, Toews is a playmaker, right? He's known to really kind of set, get the setups and know where he's, and kind of be in the right spot. That certainly can help.
What could a player like Toews do for Josh Doan?
Can certainly give him that confidence to take those shots, right? He's, like I said, he's going to be in those right. He's going to be in the right spot.
I like the idea. I think if I were to bring him in for the Mammoth, I'm looking at a PTO for Jonathan Toews. I don't think I take the risk of offering a contract until I've seen the output on the ice. Here's the other thing, though, is Toews could go into any one of the 32 NHL teams on a PTO. Might not work out with that team. However, every other team will be watching, and to see if maybe they see something in Toews through the workouts, the scrimmages in preseason that might work for them.
It would not surprise me is if, I mean, I like, I know it's a very similar situation and of how I see it when I go attend games as media. I've seen it before where like at least at the AHL level, you'll actually see like press seats for scouts. I wouldn't surprise me if Jonathan Toews signs a PTO with whatever team, any of the 32 teams in the NHL. The other 31 teams are going to have a seat in that preseason press box for and they're going to have a scout somewhere there.
Yeah. You know what I think is really going to happen, though? I think Corey Perry retires at the end of this year and Toews ends up in Edmonton. I'm just saying. We'll see.
I forgot about Corey Perry. I almost always forget about Corey Perry.
I would like to forget about Corey Perry. So I'm not a Corey Perry guy. So
there's a few players who I forget about, and I choose to just want to forget about. He's one of them.
Yeah, absolutely. But hey, by the way, Robin and I are going to talk about the Stanley Cup Final, which we're going to give you a little preview of on tomorrow's show. We're also going to talk about another potential Utah Mammoth draft pick, so you're not going to want to miss that show as well. What are your thoughts on Jonathan Toews? We tried to give you the good, the bad. I didn't even really get into the NHL Edge stats, but you could certainly explore those on your own, and we also talk about Natural Stat Trick and other pages like that. Feel free to delve back in. The last full season that Toews played, or at least most of a season that he played, was 22-23. The last full season was 21-22. Both of those are down years. So maybe that is where Toews is. But give us your thoughts on social media. Robin, where can they find us?
They can find us everywhere on social media, particularly on Twitter at Locked On Mammoth. Everywhere else at around the same handle at Locked On Mammoth. You can find me personally at Robin with a Y _ LEANO, and on Blue Sky at Robin Ice Time.
And I'm on Blue Sky at Tom Talks, and on Twitter at Callahan on Air. And Robin, we've got plenty to get to throughout this month of June. It's going to be very busy, a lot of fun. We're going to have more scouting experts looping back in, talking about potential draft picks for the Mammoth. And look, this month is going to be fun. Even though the Mammoth aren't playing, this whole month of June is going to be so much fun for us.
No, it's gonna be great. We're gonna try to take a look as much into more draft coverage as we can. We've already had a couple of draft experts. Thanks again to Will Scouch and to Tony Ferrari for coming on our show the last couple of weeks. I'm going to reach out to some more guys, see if we can get some other perspectives. Maybe we can just get a couple of episodes where we focus on one guy specifically. If there is a specific player you want us to do a full episode in depth on, let us know which players you want to do, and we can definitely look into those.
Oh, absolutely. And we look forward to doing that as well. We'll do the breakdowns. And plus, I mean, there's news trickling in all the time, right? Congratulations, by the way, to the London Knights, who won the Memorial Cup and unfortunately didn't feature any Utah Mammoth players. But you know what? A great tournament. And that was a lot of fun to watch as well. So, all right, that's going to do it for this edition of Locked On Mammoth. Thank you so much for joining us. And again, tell your friends about the show, like and subscribe, give us a thumbs up on YouTube. So for Robin, I'm Tom. Thank you very much for being a part of Locked On Mammoth.